Welcome. My name is Rich Reed, and I'm the director of the Southwest Harbor Public Library. Thank you so much for coming out tonight. Please consider joining us for a Camden Conference event on Monday, February 7th with Bowdoin's Paige Herlinger, Russia, Europe, and the Holocaust, History, Human Rights, and National Identity. We've also been rapidly filling our free tax aid appointments via the AARP. Please give us a call if you want to meet with them in March or April. We're recording this program and it'll be accessible later this week on the library YouTube channel. So one thing, we have near 100 registrants, so if everybody can be mindful of muting their, muting themselves until the end during the question and answers, please do that. We will have our speakers will all speak, and then you'll have an opportunity to ask your questions directly via the chat, or you can raise your hand on the screen, and then we can ask you to speak the question directly. So tonight, I'm very pleased to have all our panelists. We will start with Hope Rowan, who's a Southwest Harbor author and cartographer who has written 10 Days in Acadia, a kid's hiking guide to the Mount Desert Island, and 10 Days in North Woods. And she's a moderator of the Facebook group Ski MDI. Paige Steele is the conservation manager for Friends of Acadia and coordinates the volunteer groomers who groom the snow for classic and skate skiing on the Acadia Carriage roads. She manages many of the Friends of Acadia youth engagement and volunteer programs such as Acadia Quest, outdoor classrooms, urban and diverse youth, Summit Stewards, Recreation Technician, and the Acadia Winter Trails Association. Mark Fernald is a fisherman from Little Cranberry Island in Bar Harbor. He's skied on the island for 50 years and has been a volunteer trail groomer for 20. His work schedule has allowed him to do yeoman's efforts at midweek grooming over the years. And Gary Stellpflug is a hiking trails foreman at the Acadia National Park and has been working there in many capacities since the early 1970s. He began his devotion to cross-country skiing on wind skis long before grooming began, and he's been a devoted backcountry skier and has mastered telemark turns. All right, first up, we'll have Hope.
Hi, everyone, and I apologize. I think that the person that you heard in the background was actually my dad, so I apologize for him. And Dad, if you didn't mute yourself, please do. Anyway, this is great timing to do this presentation, seeing as we're about to get a big storm on Saturday, if all goes well, so you can get all enthusiastic about cross-country skiing right now, and then we'll actually have snow, hopefully, to actually go out there on the carriage roads by this weekend. So I love cross-country skiing. I first learned to ski as a kid with my family. Grew up in Massachusetts, and we go off skiing in New Hampshire, or even just around our own neighborhood. And I stuck with it so that I continued to ski without them. But growing up in the Boston suburbs, it was not something people really did, or not at least teenagers and young people in the town that I lived in. Only old people cross-country skied, which those older people were probably younger than I am now. But so then when I ended up coming up to College of the Atlantic for graduate school, I would camped with my family on MDI in the summer in the past, but that was the first time at COA that I was here during the winter, and it was amazing. And one of the really cool things is like, oh, I'm not the only one that skis. Like, other people cross-country ski for fun. Like, this is what people do here, and I found my people. So it's really a great way to embrace winter, because we have long winters here. So you gotta get out there and enjoy it. So I've gotten very into skate skiing in the past few years. So if you don't know the difference, so when you're classic skiing, you have either kick wax in the middle of the ski or scales if they're waxless skis, and that allows you to grip so that you don't go backwards. You can push off your ski, and that gives you your forward momentum. With skate skis, it's just all glide wax, so it's all glide, no quick kick. So you can really get up some momentum, and they call it skate skiing because it looks like it's the same movement that you do if you're on skates. And it's a good workout. It's a very good workout, but it's a real blast because you can go so fast by building up momentum that way. And and with the way the carriage roads are groomed, that we have the opportunity to skate ski here on the island. I will share a map so that as I talk about specific trails, I can show you where they are. So some of my favorite places to go, or more specifically, I should say, some of my favorite times to go. I love going out onto the carriage roads first things right after a snowstorm, sometimes before they've groomed, and breaking trail, and is just, if I get out there early morning sun, I'm the first one to lay tracks, and it's wonderful. But of course, that gets a little tiring too, breaking tracks. So I'm always really glad when I see the groomers come by to groom. I also really enjoy going out at night, and I used to be the only one that I'd see doing that. But in this year and last year, as people are getting outdoors more, I've seen some other people out at night, and by night, 5 o'clock in the afternoon when it's dark. But it can be so magical with all the stars in the sky, or with this nice moon. Sometimes I've been out when, it's like, it feels like daytime with all the shadows that the moon is casting, and the light, the way the moon lights up the snow, especially if the trees are all covered in snow. It's just so magical. And one of the places I really like to go out when I go out at night is the upper part of the Hadlock Loop, because so it's down, and while I have this map pulled up, I'll just sort of give you a feel for the groomed trails on the carriage roads. So there's sort of the most northern part. There's one of the major parking lots is for the trails is at Eagle Lake, the north end of Eagle Lake, and there's a section, the Witch Hole section above that parking lot, and the Eagle Lake and Aunt Betty Pond below. And then sort of the most in the middle, and then the most southern area you can access from the Parkman Mountain or Brown Mountain Station parking lots. And that gets you the amphitheater and Hadlock Loop and the Around Mountain Trail. So this upper part, I don't know if you can see my cursor, but between the Hadlock Loop to the east, that green trail there, that has some, it's not totally wooded in, so you can really see the sky. And if there is a nice moon out, it's nice and bright. Whenever I go out at night, I bring a headlamp, but I never use it because with all the light reflecting on the snow, you don't really need it. And especially along that particular stretch, it's a really great place to go at night. And I think this whole southern area is my favorite place to ski. The Hadlock Loop is always a sort of a great little after work ski. It's about 4 miles. The amphitheater loop is really nice. It's a little bit longer. And if I want, personally, if I want a longer ski, I like to do by Aunt Betty's Pond and Seven Bridges, or do the whole Around Mountain Loop. Seven Bridges is beautiful. There's actually only 6 bridges, and I think maybe there used to be seven. A park friend told me. But it's really pretty. It's steep and curvy. So if you haven't done much skiing before, I wouldn't suggest going down Seven Bridges because it's relatively steep and there's lots of back and forth. But it's rather beautiful. And the great thing about all of these trails is that it's on the carriage road, so it's a great place for novice skiers because you don't have, for the most part, you really don't have any steep slopes because all the carriage roads were graded for horse and carriage. So it's a much more gradual gradients than you would find at a lot of cross-country ski trails. If you're very much a beginner and are looking to get more involved in cross-country skiing, I would suggest a great place to start would be on this Eagle Lake connector in red here. That is very flat. There's a little bit of up and down, or actually it goes down, then it goes up. And you get a little pond view, and it's a very accessible and easy section of trail. And this whole Witch Hole Pond loop, I tend to do it less, but I know it's what a lot of people, it makes a nice loop, and a lot of people enjoy that one. And that has more deciduous trees compared to a lot of the evergreens down at some of these other trails. But it's all wonderful. So you can't go wrong on any of these groom trails in the park. So I will leave it there and pass this off to Paige.
Thank you, Hope. That was a great introduction to skiing on MDI. It's getting me excited for the upcoming storm. I am going to do a short introduction, then I'll share a few slides that I created. And I'm also a College of the Atlantic graduate and came here from Oklahoma. Not a lot of skiing there, but I definitely love the cold and the winters, and was fortunate to be able to work in the park as a registered Maine guide, and decided I want to continue working in conservation after I graduated, and was thankfully able to find several jobs in my field in the state of Maine and New Hampshire. And then I came to Friends of Acadia to work with a lot of the volunteer and youth programs in the park, which has been quite a treat. And it's led me to working with the Acadia Winter Trails program and having the privilege of working with groomers such as Mark Fernald and park staff such as Stellpflug. So I'm going to talk a little bit about this amazing place to cross-country ski and this amazing community program that allows us to maximize skiing out in the park. I'm going to share my screen here. And here we go. So what is the Acadia Trails Winter Trails Association? Well, it started out from the community 30 years ago, and it followed some different couple of people in the community said, hey, we're restoring the carriage roads. Let's get out there and start grooming them for cross-country skiing. And, you know, they're non-motorized. You can't take snowmobiles on them. You can't take four-wheelers on them. So they're perfect for cross-country skiing and snowshoeing. And so this followed right as Friends of Acadia had formed to start a fundraising campaign to support the rehabilitation of the carriage road system, which had fallen into full disrepair because of lack of funding over the decades. And so it had grown in so much, they look like an old hiking trail or an old tote road, and they look nothing like they do today. And so after this restoration began is when local grooming efforts began. And so these dedicated volunteers started grooming at a time when volunteers were more plentiful than park staff or Friends of Acadia staff. And so they were really running this program all on their own. Well, over the time, more volunteers came on to help, and Friends of Acadia grew in size and staff, and the Acadia National Park staff grew significantly. Gary can mention that, but he used to be the only trails person on staff, and now we have a full team when this program started with the grooming. And in that time also, we have a much longer visitation season. We have a lot more visitors coming starting in April, leaving in November. And so people are trying to come to the park at a time of year when it's not so busy. So we're starting to get a lot more visitors in the winter time too. So who makes up the Acadia Winter Trails Association? Well, we have the Acadia National Park staff, and I think of them as providing the landscape to this program. If you think about going out and skiing, you need obviously the person who's going to ski, you need the gear that you need to ski, and you need the place that you're going to ski in. And quite literally, Acadia National Park is obviously the landscape and the place that you're skiing in. But they also contribute a lot of staff support. They're out there plowing the roads after a snowstorm, and they get the oh, thank you. They get the parking lots cleared and get the groomers in there. They maintain the equipment, the grooming equipment. So they are doing the tune-ups in the fall, making sure everything's running properly, and the drags are attached to the snowmobiles properly. So they contribute a lot of time and effort to this program. and we couldn't do it without them, aside from it being within the national park. Friends of Acadia is kind of the gear that you need to go skiing. We kind of, as a metaphor, we provide a lot of staff support as well for coordination efforts. We provide funding for the grooming equipment, helmets for the volunteers, fuel, all kinds of the bits and pieces that you need to actually run a grooming program. And then we also provide the communications as best as possible, and which has gotten more and more streamlined over the years with advances in technology. But we put out the grooming reports after the groomers go out. And then the third part of our amazing A-team, as I like to call them, is the groomers, who go out and spend anywhere from 2 hours to 8 hours at a time doing a loop, getting it all packed down, setting tracks, and just making it really pristine skiing and snow showing conditions. They once they get back in and get warmed up, they'll send over a report to Friends of Acadia, and then we post that on our website and Facebook and social media pages, and try to let the public know as soon as possible once the groomers have gotten back in and warmed up. And they also are helping with decision making throughout the entire year, which equipment is going to be best for our program, what's the best training to do for the new volunteers coming in, what fuel's better to use, ethanol or non-ethanol, all those nitty-gritty decisions. They're there the whole time making decisions with the National Park staff and Friends of Acadia staff. Kim, could you go to the next? Thank you so much. And so one of the big things that's changed over the years is, as the program's grown, the support for the program's grown significantly. And so through endowments such as the Lily Bride Endowment, through skiers who contribute to Friends of Acadia, through grants raised, etc., we've been able to make the program significantly more reliable by purchasing machines that are designed to cross-country groom. They're workhorse machines. They're not designed to go fast. They're designed to go slow and pull a lot of weight, as these drags do pull a lot of weight. So that's allowed us to not have machines that are broken down often. And we're really trying to maximize those donation dollars to get the best equipment for the job, so it can do the job that we want it to do, and the equipment can last and not need a lot of repairs. Next slide, please. And so because of this, all these efforts from the community, from staff, from groomers, it's a very successful program. We're able to groom about 20 miles of the system, and we have a lot of users in the winter. And I just wanted to put this in that USA Today voted Acadia National Park the top national park to visit in the winter this year with a family, and the grooming of the carriage roads was the main attraction. And so we have a lot of use out there, a lot of different types of users. And while it's not a ski area, it's not a formal ski area, it is really superb winter recreation in a national park. And I'm sure you guys have all been out there where people are kind of like, where do I go in my lane? And so we have these guideposts out there to say, hey, if you're this kind of user, try to use this lane, etc. They're guidelines, they're not rules. But since we do have so many types of visitors and winter recreation activities going on in the park now in the winter, we're trying to help people understand what's the best way for them to go out and enjoy that. Next slide, please. And so I just wanted to end with a huge thank you to everyone who participates in this program, whether you're a skier, whether you groom, whether you're a staff person, or just one of the cheerleaders of winter in Acadia. Thank you so much for all your support and contributions. And we do have a great storm coming up. If you're looking for a grooming report, you can go to the Friends of Acadia homepage, scroll down to the bottom, and you'll see Connect on Social, and you'll see those little boxes that say Carriage Road Grooming Update. If you click on that, that'll give you the most recent update. And that's on the bottom of our homepage on our website, and as well as our front social media. But yeah, so we're supposed to have a huge storm. Hopefully it comes through. And so I'll tee it off to Mark and say, I hope you're ready to groom this weekend. Thank you.
Okay. My name's Mark Fernald. I'm from the Cranberry Isles, 6th generation from out there, but I've got a home over here too, and I split my year between MDI and Little Cranberry. I'm a lobster fisherman like all my forefathers were. I started enjoying the Carriage roads probably 50 years ago as a teenager, running, cross-country skiing. It was one of my favorite places to be. I always felt a lot better after spending an hour or two walking, biking, or skiing. So I always thought what an incredible gift to mankind for a family to put so much thought, planning, and financing into this system and then hand it over to Acadia National Park for everyone to enjoy and exercise and gather their thoughts. I always felt a little guilt about just taking from it. So grooming's been a way, you know, that I can do my part. I first started grooming about 21 years ago. My dentist for 30 years was Bob Masuko. He moved here from Colorado in the early 70s. And he was a good classic skier and skate skier. And he pioneered the grooming around here. He was using his own snowmobile on an old metal box frame that he dragged behind him. He kept trying to encourage me to groom, saying we need some young blood out there. We're getting too old for this. So I started grooming a couple of years before he stopped. I was trained in the beginning by David Keefe, who was a good groomer. He groomed up in Sugarloaf for a while, and then we groomed together for 7 or 8 years. And we're getting some new younger groomers now, which is good. I'm not ready to retire, but we'll probably leave the big storms for the younger groomers. I enjoy cleaning up after we get everything packed down, just doing maintenance as far as cleaning up footprints and ski tracks. And lots of times I'll be out there at 5 in the morning and get back home by 7 after cleaning up 12 miles of trails. And then I'd change my clothes, be back out there by 7:30, and oftentimes be the first one on the trail. So I always figured I was having a good day if that happened. But I started skate skiing 13 years ago after classic skiing for 35 years. I enjoy both, but I find the skating very exhilarating, and I've done 450Ks up in Sugarloaf and finished near the back of the pack, most of them, you know, competing against college ski teams, but that's kind of what I expected. And I just, my time's improved each time, and that's all I can ask for, I guess. But there's some years I've logged 900 miles skating here when the snow's been good, and several years of 75 to 100 hours of grooming. And we're so fortunate to have this gem of a park, and Friends of Acadia and all the people that have the foresight and vision and means to put it all this together and then turn it over for all of us to enjoy and all the future generations to come. And I just kind of want to give a special thanks to the Rockefeller family and Leela Bright and Bob Masuko. And I don't really have a lot else to say. It's my first Zoom meeting ever, so I just glad to be able to do it and do my part. So that's really all I have to say. I'll be able to answer some questions if anybody wants to.
Thank
ask
you,
me.
Mark. We'll pass that over to Gary right now, and then we'll do some more questions. That's awesome. Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Hi, everyone. I'm Gary Stellpflug. I introduced. I've been working for the Park Service for quite a long time. I really need to correct something that Yuri said. He said I'd mastered the telemark turn. I think what I mastered was falling down trying to do the telemark turn. I have managed to squeeze one or two in a row here and there, but I hardly mastered. And for those of you who would like to see some action like that in Acadia, there's a YouTube video I'd recommend. It's called Working for the Weekend. And if you go to that site, you can search Ski Acadia. And that's a couple lads skiing on the southeast corner of Door Mountain. And they're doing some things I was never able to do. And usually when I was trying to telemark ski, I would end up like this. There's my low tech answer, but there's where I'd end up in the snow. Anyway, I've had a lot of fun doing that, and I've been doing it ever since I got to the island in the early 1970s. I'm sure Mark would remember this, but starting on wood skis, in that time, very few people had plastic skis. And I bought them at the home store in Northeast Harbor. They sold skis, they were open all winter. And I do remember, and maybe some of you other folks do, that you had to work and coat your skis, wooden skis, with a pine tar, which generally got all over your hands and was quite a mess, but that was part of the fun of doing it. It's nice to hear from guys like you, Mark, that people were actually cross-country skiing not long ago here in the park and in the area. I don't know the history of skiing, but obviously it predates me, so that's really cool. Just out of interest, I know we had downhill skiing on McFarland Mountain. There was a rope tow there from 1936 to 1970, and again, just before my time, but I know there's some black and white vintage photos and film of that, of people enjoying McFarland Mountain. As far as that skiing backcountry, again, I've skied in the backcountry rather than being a great backcountry skier. Perhaps I just didn't know any better, that I shouldn't be skiing on top of Sargent Mountain and places like that. But at that time, there were not a lot of other people doing that. There were not even a lot of snowshoers that I would see often up there. Sure, other people were, but you would not expect to see what you see on the groomed carriage roads today. Sometimes you could go a week or two or three and go to an area and see your own tracks again, and no one else had been there. And that was quite enjoyable. I think that there's a number of reasons that we're seeing a change now. We are seeing people on snowshoes and on backcountry skis on some of the trails now that I never saw folks in the past. I truly feel that I feel there was more snow back then in the 1970s and 1980s. We seem to have more snow that stayed longer. And I can remember skiing on top of Sargent Mountain into early May and enjoying huge snow drifts and snowfields on top of Sargent that late in the season that had been there all year. And I certainly remember a lot more snow than we're seeing. Every winter seemed to be like whenever it was 4 or 5 years ago, I believe 2015, we had about 4 feet of snow in March that was around for 2 or 3 weeks. And I seem to remember that being more the norm than it is now. And I have another picture. I'll try and hold it up for you. And this is on Cadillac Mountain, and it's very recent. And it's on the east side of Cadillac Mountain. And I can remember being up there and literally looking up towards the summit of Cadillac and seeing nothing but just the tiniest treetops showing through huge snowfields and places like that on southeast slopes of Sargent Mountain and such, that there were just literally 8 feet of snow and things like that in some of the valleys. And if you're familiar with any of those areas, Maple Springs Trail, skiing into Maple Springs Trail, which was just literally filled with snow and not really having to worry about effort or running into rocks and things like that. And I don't see that as much. And I also remember, especially the northern slopes of Sergeant Mountain had not completely grown in from the 1947 fire. So there were a lot of open areas that are now starting to grow in. And the really good folks can ski some of those narrower slots and such that I am not any more able to do. But when I did first start, there was a lot more open area to ski too. So that's changed. And I feel that also we'll see more people out. And again, I think Mark would attest to this. I think that the gear that people have is so much improved over when I first started skiing that, like I say, wooden skis, and now you don't see wooden skis, and better poles, better skis. People have skins that they put on the bottom of their skis now, and the gloves, the Gore-Tex coats, everything, just about anything that people have now. You can stay warmer, you can stay drier, and therefore you could stay a lot safer. And I feel like that's helping people venture out onto some of the peaks now instead of just the carriage roads. I think there's also, there's a little more free time for folks to get out into some of the more difficult places to reach than people had years ago. For those of you that don't want to just be on the groom paths, check your ski maps, like Paige has said, go online and see where things are groomed. There are some sections of the carriage road that are not groomed, and that would be a good taste of seeing setting tracks through fresh snow or deeper snow to see how you like that. So there's places like that to go. And excuse me, the Western Mountain roads would be other areas. I see folks now skiing some of our more level trails like the Astiku path and Jordan and Bubble Ponds path. People are trying out those areas more. Again, they're not groomed, so they're a little more wild and less crowded than you see on the groomed paths. I think that one other thing I would like to just mention, as Paige brought up, trying to get folks to stay in their lane is almost impossible, but I really would just encourage everybody to try that as best they can and to follow the etiquette so that everybody can enjoy the ski paths that are groomed. And really, that's all I have to say too, just that I've watched things change over the years. I've watched the snowfall amount and season change, and I've certainly seen the gear change and the number of people trying to be in the backcountry. So that's really all I have to say, but I would love to answer any questions that folks have to direct towards me. So thank you.
Great. Thank you, Hope, Paige, Mark, and Gary. So yeah, anybody that wants to ask a question directly to one of our panelists, or generally, you can raise your hand and we can select you. You can also ask a question through the chat feature. And yeah, so go ahead on that. And so so Gary, have you gotten out for any skis this year? And where did you go?
Yes, fortunately I have. Took advantage of the Western Mountain and Seal Cove Road loop. And again, it's like telling folks where to find the best trout fishing hole. You don't do it, but I did that loop with my gal, and I think we saw 3 snowmobiles and 2 fat bikes. So it was a very quiet morning for us. And it is not groomed, but often the snowmobiles will leave a nice track, or previous skiers will often leave a nice track. So yes, that was wonderful. I wish it had lasted longer.
Great. And So we have questions. So we have some questions about where to get decent used cross-country gear, and also places where you could do ski rentals for first timers. And if anyone in the audience has some good answers from these two, they could add that into the chat. I think Cadillac Mountain Sports does rentals.
Epic Sports. Yeah, Epic Sports in Bangor, I believe, does rentals too. And that's a good place to try. And they also have used skis for sale at Epic Sports. And I'm not plugging them, I just know that they've got rentals and used skis.
And then there's a question about some of the technical issues about like how much snow it might take in order to groom the trails, and what did the drags do under various conditions. So I don't know whether Mark or Paige can address that.
Let Mark start if he doesn't mind, because he's the professional groomer. But
So what was the question? I just got unmuted here.
So how much snow do you need in order to do some grooming, and then can you say anything about the conditions, like what it's like to drag, like if you get a lot of powder versus you get some cement, or is there any rhyme or reason to like when you go, and what are some outcomes that you're hoping for?
Well, it's different. Like right now where we groomed, the last time we groomed, it's all a base of ice right now. So we can groom with less snow than we could if it was dirt showing. But wherever we didn't groom, it's not a packed ice surface. So I would say 6 inches would be pretty much what you'd want for a minimum. And the Jinsu is definitely the type of drag to use for most cases. It really made a big difference in the end result.
yeah, and depending on if it's really icy, or like it's really tricky and interesting, because if it's really wet snow, you want to let it dry out a little bit and then try and let that water soak down to the bottom and let the top layer dry out, so that when you go through and pack it down, it doesn't turn straight to ice. You do want that awesome base of ice and packed down. But yeah, so depending on what the snow conditions are, depends on if you're going to set tracks or not, or if you're going to drop the tines and how deep you drop the tines to chop up the snow. So it's very nuanced. I've learned over the years, as Mark knows well, is that it is nuanced depending on the snow and the temperatures as to how you groom.
And someone asked how much snow we get and how often. So whether or not or not, it's incredibly variable is pretty much the only way to sum it up. On any given time, you could be getting snow inland and we just get rain here. Or sometimes we get one of those storms that just hits the down east coast and we get a dump. When to the north, they don't. So I think it varies a ton. And one way, if you are a social media type, there is a ski MDI group that I help to moderate, and that's a great way to get what the conditions are at any given moment. So if you're coming from a distance, you don't drive to get here only to not be able to ski.
Thank you. And Gary, we have a question about, any sort of safety advice about if you are going skiing, in a off trail, or what's best practice or best advice?
That's a good question. And I've thought about it. It really depends on your level and what you're trying, what do you want to achieve. You certainly can practice some, if you want to really try telemark skis, you can certainly try them out at ski slopes before you go off on your own. You want to know where you are, and certainly have, I believe Hope said carry a headlamp. That's a good idea, just in case something goes wrong while you're out. Let's hope not. I always take extra gloves and things depending on the temperature, of course. Have a good idea where you're going, and the same rules that apply to hiking. It's a good idea to let folks know where you're going. It's a great idea to take someone with you, especially if they've already been out on some of the backcountry trails. So I think pretty much the same things you would apply for hiking also apply for your skiing. And you want to know yourself too. You don't want to attempt something that if you look at something and it's sketchy, maybe it's a good idea not to try it on your own when nobody's around and it's 3 PM getting dark. So you're gonna have to play it by ear there. Again, follow most of your hiking ideas about safety would apply to backcountry skiing too.
Great, thank you. And so we've got some lively comments, with suggestions about where to get skis, including Penobscot Valley Ski Club has a ski sale during the fall in Bangor, and reiterating about Epic Sports and in Bangor. And then also there's a really good specialist in Portland, Boulder, Nordic Sports. Definitely worth considering. And then also Acres Ski in Andover, Maine. They're like a family-owned, sort of nationally known cross-country ski shop, since like the 40s. And so they're a remarkable resource in Maine. So one thing just to be mindful of is you come to ski on the trails, and particularly at some of these trailheads, is like this last snow we had, there was a lot of interest and there were more cars than I'd seen in the past, like cocktail hour. I'm used to being, one of the few people out there, but I had to park on the street. And I did call, the, Bar Harbor Police and the Mount Desert Police, just asking for, advice on parking. And they said, like at the Eagle Lake trailhead, as long as you are, on the other side of the white line, that they feel like that's not obstructing traffic and that's a fine and safe place to park. I mean, I think it's really important, they're saying it's really important, certainly when the plows are out, you should not be parking on the roads, that's a major hazard. And also the Mount Desert Police, they were saying, from Browns Gate, it's a nice straight open stretch towards the the pond. So if you go towards Hadlock Pond, that you can park safely on the side of the roads there. So again, just try not to be too eager and park out on the roads while the plows are out, because that's very problematic. And certainly one cautionary point about the Eagle Lake Road. I grew up in Maine driving on main roads, and Eagle Lake Road doesn't look too troublesome, but it really, it can be hard to drive, and it can be pretty easy to go off the side of the road, towards sort of that ranger station up there. So yeah, so just, be mindful of that, is that, you definitely want to look for some good road conditions before you come out here.
Yeah, and that's a good point. Most of the parking is indeed on the public roads. There's very little room for as many folks as are skiing now. There's very little room actually in the park. So parking issues would be a town issue as opposed to a national park issue.
And they definitely recommend, if you want to have sure parking, go to the Hull Visitor sort of center, that's well plowed. And yeah, just a pitch also to consider if the lakes, if that the lakes are safe, which can be hard to know if there's snow cover, but this morning there was a 1/4 inch of snow on Eagle Lake, and I had a really nice ski this morning. But I knew it was safe, and so Long Pond is a really nice place to go too, where it's nice and open. So that's definitely worth considering. So, okay. So any panelists, you guys have anything to add right now?
Yeah, they're excellent suggestions too. Again, if you want to try skiing without a groomed track, that's an excellent idea to ski the lakes. They're wonderful.
Great. Okay, so all right. Well, I think we've had a very excellent event, and thank you, Hope. Thank you, Paige. Thank you, Mark. Thank you, Gary. Thank you, everybody, for coming out. Well, you know, we will have this recorded and on our YouTube channel. So if you want to refer to it or you want to share it with a friend, and we really appreciate all of your participation. So, all right.
Thank you.
All right.
Thank you for having me.
Good night, everybody.
Good night.
Thank you, guys.